Hello, it is mid-August 2021 and I'm in Wyoming's Wind River Range, Bridger-Teton National Forest, about to set off on a backpacking adventure. I'm quite excited for this trip, my first visit to the winds. It's also going to be, I believe, one of the most challenging trips that I've ever done. It'll be a physical challenge, of course, to be out for close to a week, but more so of a mental challenge for me on this trip because I'm going to be doing a fair amount of off-trail travel, and that'll be a real test of my skills, a test of myself as an outdoorsman, as a backpacker, as a navigator. So I'm looking forward to getting out here, pushing my boundaries, hopefully learning and growing in one of the most beautiful places in the world. I'm at the Boulder Lake trailhead and I'm about to set off. It's time to hit the trail. Now the Boulder Canyon Trail just transformed from hot, dry, dusty shrubland to a nice, cool forest. I hope it stays like this for a bit because it's only mid-morning, but it's already mid-80s. Boulder Creek. I've got a couple miles of pretty hardy climb coming up, and I expect that's gonna start fairly soon for me here. I'm starting to switch back up. I wonder how I got the name Boulder Creek, huh? Pretty beach and deep green pool along Boulder Creek. Unfortunately, I've just passed two fellas who told me that my climb hasn't even really started in earnest yet, so just getting the legs warmed up right now. This is the most open look that I've had so far of the Boulder Creek Canyon. Pretty area on a pretty day. Up and away. Climbing out of Boulder Canyon, heading towards Ethel Lake, and then hopefully Vera Lake. Boulder Creek, flowing down Boulder Canyon. I'm leaving Boulder Creek behind and moving on to the North Fork of Boulder Creek, and I believe that this right here may be the North Fork Falls. Ethel is straight, Bear to the right. I'm heading to the right. I've definitely risen quite a bit in elevation. I believe I still have a bit to climb though. Ethel Lake, of the 11 people I've seen so far today, 6 were coming from here, so pretty popular place, I guess. Dugway Lake. Boy, oh boy, it's been steep climbing out of Dugway. There's a pair of little ground birds here. A small, unnamed lake as I continue to climb towards Vera. I'm really hopeful that this mountain here is my last hurrah before dropping down slightly to Lake Vera. Only time will tell. I got so excited there, I thought this was Lake Vera, but I believe it is another smaller, unnamed lake to the best that I can tell, so the marathon continues. Ooh, buddy. A sight for tired eyes. A long, hot climb today. About 3,500 feet of elevation gain. But I made it to my destination, Lake Vera. Now it's time to find a campsite and settle in for some well-earned relaxation at this beautiful spot. Home sweet home. This little spot right here in these nice green trees, a couple hundred yards from the lake, is going to be where I set up. 19 of Wyoming's 20 tallest mountains reside in the Wind River Range, in addition to over 150 glaciers, including the largest glaciers in the U.S. Rockies. On this trip, I'm using the Wind River Range North map by Beartooth Publishing, supplemented by the free U.S. Forest Service Visitor Center app. Let's take a look at the map for day 1. I started at the Boulder Lake trailhead, which then requires a short road walk to get to the actual trail start of the Boulder Canyon Trail, which I was on for all day long today. Checked out Lake Ethel, walked by Dugway Lake, continued climbing until I reached camp at Lake Vera. Day 1 was about 10 miles. Day 1 of my backpacking trip in Wyoming's Wind River Range has been a great day. Albeit with a lot of tough hiking, but all's well that ends well, and here I am at the beautiful Lake Vera. Also had a lot of great sights coming up through the Boulder Canyon. There is some mild bug pressure around some of the waterways, but I've got my clothes treated with permethrin, and my mom and dad gave me these bug bracelets, so hopefully between these multiple sets of defenses, I should be good to go. I've got camp set up, I've got dinner in me, I'm settling in for what should hopefully be a relaxing evening on Lake Vera, and that'll be the end of day 1. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 2 on my backpacking trip in the Bridger Wilderness of Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming. I had a clear, calm night last night, and then around morning time, a bunch of clouds have rolled in, which isn't a big deal in and of itself, but they have brought a decent amount of thunder peals as well as a few small rain sprinkles. Again, not a huge deal at face value, but considering that I am beginning my off-trail portion of my trip today, I certainly don't want to get caught in a thunderstorm while trying to navigate across unfamiliar terrain. So I delayed leaving camp by about an hour this morning to hope that it would move out. The thunder has got a little less often, and the last rain shower ended a few minutes ago. So I'm hopeful that I can go ahead and get going here, and obviously hope for the best there. So I've got about half my day on trail today, and then about half my day off trail today. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting started on the off trail portion of my adventure. And I've got camp packed up. I'm getting my boots on now, and it'll be time to hit the trail and time to hit the off trail. Adios, Lake Vera. There have been a ton of blowdowns across the trail, and I was warned that this could be the case due to a windstorm that came through last year, and this area is supposedly kind of the last area that hasn't been cleared yet. This is one of the Firehole lakes as I continue to make my way along the Highline Trail this morning. Every 100 feet or so is a new obstacle. Some I step over, some I duck under, some I maneuver around. Barricades, I'm used to them. I'll run right through them. Out in the distance are a couple more of the Firehole lakes. I believe this one to the right is called Lake Susan. And as I continue around here, we'll get a decent look at this is definitely the worst patch of blowdowns that I've kind of had to maneuver my way around. I don't even know where the trail is. I'm just trying to kind of move forward, but you know, it hasn't been too bad, and it's a fun adventure. It has started to sprinkle here over the last 10 or 15 minutes, and the thunder continues to roll in the distance. I'm very, very, very hopeful that this shower does not turn into a storm. Full Moon Lake. The rain has subsided for the moment, which is good news because I'm about to break off the official trail system and hopefully follow an unofficial trail for the next mile or two along Halls Creek. Well, the unofficial trail is faint and I lose it in some places, but I believe in general I'm heading the way I need to go. It looks like got a little bit of a climb here to conquer. This is one of the Halls Creek lakes. I don't see much of a trail through here, but I'm just gonna continue moving in the direction I think is correct. I gotta get used to it. I believe I found a bear trail for a little while there. I seen about a dozen scats over maybe a half mile. Looks like this boulder field is my next obstacle. I'll have to be careful with my footing. Ooh, that boulder field is pretty sketchy. I hope I don't have too much more like that. And of course it started to rain about halfway across. Stopped pretty quickly, but got the rocks a little more slippery. It is really pretty out here along Halls Creek. A bit stressful trying to find my way and hope I'm doing the right things, but so far so mostly good. Made it back to the official trail system. I'll be on this for maybe a quarter mile before I cut off again, and this will be the last official trail that I see for about 3 days if I stick to my plan. Whew, what's funny is that wasn't even supposed to be the adventurous part of my day. That's coming up next, but if there was an unofficial trail along Halls Creek, it must have been on the other side of the river because it wasn't on my side. Well, I appear to be in luck because for the past 5 minutes or so, I've been following this footpath that appears to be going in the exact direction that I need to go to get to Halls Lake. Maybe this will make my going a little easier here. A deer just ran up through the trees. Pretty big one too. Another one of the Halls Creek lakes. I'm still been able to follow this faint horse trail. I know it's a horse trail because I've seen some old horse poop on it. Well, I thought I had lost my horse trail about 15 minutes ago. It kept cutting through willows and I decided to walk through a nice grassy meadow instead. But I believe I may have picked it back up. Awesome. I think I'm permanently separated from my horse trail. I haven't seen it in quite some time. But I'm doing pretty good on my own, I feel like. Moving in the right direction. Hiking's not too bad out here. And the sun's popped out, turned into a bit of a pretty day. This big ridge has been blocking me from the direction that I'd really like to head for a while now. But it looks like I'm coming up to a pass here. I should be able to pick my way through and regain track towards Halls Lake. Made it to the top of the pass, looking out over the Middle Fork Lake. Some thunder's coming in, so I'm going to get down pretty quickly. I added several miles to my day by trying to work my way around that ridge, which I ended up climbing over mostly anyways. But you live and you learn, and that's what I'm out here to do. To live and to learn. There's so much bear scat out here that I'm literally having to watch my step to make sure that I don't step in any. It's so common. Haven't seen any bears, fortunately. I'm trying to make a lot of noise, of course. This is the last lake that I should be coming to before I reach Halls itself. So I'm going to pick my way around the side here and should be closing in on home. This is a really pretty lake here. It looks like there are some fish in it potentially, but I've really only got eyes for one baby, and that's the next lake over through the gap, Halls Lake. There's my first view of it. Well, she sure is a beaut. Halls Lake. Finally made it. I'd imagine that, well, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that I'm the only person for miles and miles. Pretty neat. Now it's time to find a spot to set up camp. I've been following Halls Creek for a good portion of the day today, and this is where she starts out, flowing out of Halls Lake. I believe that this little cove here looks like my best spot at a campsite. It's the most sheltered place I've seen, and I also want to make sure to respect the proper distances from the waterways, and I believe I'm accomplishing that.
The winds are composed primarily of a granitic batholith, which is rock formed deep under the surface of the earth. Over hundreds of millions of years, rocks that were once covering this granite were eroded away.
Let's take a look at the map for day 2. I started today at Lake Vera, followed the Highline Trail, past the Firehole Lakes, past Full Moon Lake, where I then took the unofficial Halls Creek Trail until I lost it. It crosses over the river here. I didn't cross over. I stayed on the left side. Anyways, I connected with the Fremont Trail, also the Continental Divide Trail, and then I was on that for a short period before I broke off trail. Now I'm not going to show my off-trail route for two main reasons. One, anyone who is looking to do off-trail route on their own should be able to navigate on their own instead of trying to follow what someone else did. Conditions can change. And secondly, I definitely did not take the most efficient route, so you don't want to follow the route I took anyway. So basically I went from the CDT and I have camp set up along the bank of Halls Lake. Day 2 was about 11 miles. Day 2 of my backpacking adventure in the Wind River Range of Wyoming has been an extremely adventurous day. Certainly one of the most adventurous days of backpacking that I've ever had. It had its ups and downs, from the sketchy bouldering in the rain, to all the off-trail travel, to picking the wrong route around the ridge and adding a couple miles to my day. Par for the course out here. One of the things that went really well for me today was the weather. For the good portion of the day, the sun was blocked by the clouds and helped keep its unrelenting rays from beating down on me. And despite thundering for about 50% of the day, I never did have a big storm roll in on me, so that was a big blessing. I've got a beautiful campsite here. I've got dinner in me, and I'm gonna settle in for what is hopefully a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 2. Good night. Before settling in, let's take one last look around at my campsite at Halls Lake. I worked hard to get here today, and I think the payoff is pretty worth it. Good morning. Made to day 3 in the Bridger Wilderness, Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming. My tent site ended up being quite lumpy, unfortunately, last night, but it was very well protected from the wind, as well as protected on 3 sides from bear attack, so I made do with the lumps. Today is the crux of my trip. If I can pull off today, then the rest of my route should fall into place and be relatively straightforward in comparison. My plan is to cover 10 plus miles, mostly off trail. There may be about 2 sections where I link up with an unofficial trail through Europe Canyon and up Hay Pass, but for the rest of the time I'm going to be left to my own navigation devices. I can't make as big a mistake as I made yesterday when I went around the ridge instead of, I guess, paying more attention and finding an earlier, easier pass to cut across. It felt like I made a lot of right decisions yesterday, but that's the nature of the beast when backpacking. You can make 1,000 correct decisions, but the one incorrect decision that you make could cost you. And I'm fortunate that yesterday it only cost me a couple extra miles of work. My margin of error today is much smaller. I can't afford to make that large of an error again. Today's a big day. I'm excited for it. I'm gonna finish up breakfast, get camp packed, and there'll be time to hit the off trail. According to my map, there is no name on this majestic, towering 12,128 foot peak. So y'all already know this is gonna be Mount Lane. If anyone ever comes and camps near the outlet of Halls Lake and you look to the northwest, pay homage to Mount Lane. Looking back the way I've come, there are, in the background, are the mountains that sit behind Halls Lake. It's a sunny morning so far. Already feels warmer than yesterday. This is the first of the Halls Creek lakes to come out of Halls Lake. I've already navigated further south than I wanted to. So I'm going to have to try to cut up west now pretty hard. I'm climbing straight up this mountain to try to get back on track. I'm a little gun shy from yesterday about going too far out of my way to go around them. This pass through here is the way that I probably should have come up, but I'm almost back on track. I'm going to skirt around the right side of these lakes at the base of Medina Mountain. And then once I get to the other side of that ridge, not the high ridge, the ridge to the right, I'll be right back on track. Alright, I've made it up to the base of Medina Mountain. I was probably about right over there. Came across 1, 2, 3, 4 boulder fields, and then climbed up. I'm almost at the top of the ridge here. Once I drop down to the other side, I'll be right back on track. Ran into a group of boys out here. These are the first people I've seen since day one. This lake is only named by its elevation, 10,806, but I think it's way too beautiful to not have a name. So I'm going to call this Lake Beth, named after my mom. I'm cliffed out for the first time on my trip, so I'm going to have to retrace my steps a little bit. I need to get down into this valley, which will take me down into Europe Canyon. It's obviously a little hazy today, but I don't mind because it helps protect me from the sun a bit. I believe I'm now on the cusp of Europe Canyon, which is a fairly popular destination out in the winds. There's an unofficial trail that runs through it. I'm following this little water path now to hopefully get to the bottom and connect with the trail. Another pretty lake that appears to only be named by its elevation, Lake 10542. I'm going to call this one Lake Mark, after my dad. I am unofficial trail cruising right now. Finally making good pace. For the first time today, I should have about a mile on the unofficial trail, which would be nice. Another lake that appears to be only named by its elevation. This is Lake 10741. I'm going to call it Lake Michael, after my brother. This is the end of the unofficial trail for me. I'm going to break off trail again and begin the toughest part of my day, to climb up to Hay Pass. But before I do that, I'm gonna find a spot to eat lunch. I'd like to secure a little shade, but that may be a fool's errand here at high noon. Alrighty, well, I'm fixing to break off trail again for the next several miles. I'm going to start out by coming across the river and working my way around that ridge to get to the other side, and there's a couple of lakes over there that I'll kind of leapfrog from lake to lake. A look back into Europe Canyon, which I'm now leaving behind. It's a very pretty area with a lot of beautiful lakes, and I had fun naming them after some of my loved ones. The beginning of Long Lake. I believe I need to pick my way down to the shoreline because I don't think I'm going to be able to get across way up here. Long Lake, stretched out in almost all of her long beauty. Traversing Long Lake has been intense. It's one huge boulder field. There were two spots where I had to climb a sheer cliff face, tossing my poles up ahead of me. But the way ahead looks a little easier once I drop down to the shore, and there are a couple people on the far side of the lake, so if they can make it, I'm sure I can. And that was a cool group of 4 down there on Long Lake. They actually came the way that I'm heading and are going the way I came from, so we exchanged some information. Fortunately, it sounds like the way I'm heading is much easier than the way they're heading, at least along Long Lake there. A handful of glaciers on the side of this ridge. In the foreground is Glacier Lake, and in the background is one of the 2 North Fork lakes. The other is hidden behind that rocky pinnacle to the right. Glacier Lake, up close and personal. A 360-degree look at the basin that houses Glacier Lake and the 2 North Fork lakes. North Fork is, one of them's right there. Barbara Lake. Home sweet home. I made the executive decision not to send it up Hay Pass today, but rather to camp at Barbara Lake, and I'll talk more in depth about that decision once I get set up.
Glaciation that began during ice ages about 500,000 years ago was a major shaper of the wind's jagged peaks, deep valleys, and picturesque lakes.
Let's take a look at the map for day 3. Since today was mostly off-trail travel, I'm going to show the destinations along the way, but not my exact route. I started at the south side of Halls Lake, past Lake Beth, joined with the unofficial Europe Canyon Trail around Lake Mark, and then I cut away from the unofficial Europe Canyon Trail around Lake Michael. I then came through the Long Lake, Glacier Lake, North Fork Lakes areas before setting up camp at Barbara Lake. Day 3 was about 11 miles. As I mentioned before setting up, I made the decision to cut the day a little shorter than I had originally anticipated, but I'm not disappointed at all. Quite the opposite. I am proud of what I've accomplished out here today. Covered about 11 miles, 10 of those off trail. I did a great job navigating. The only time I got off track was this morning when I headed a little too far south, but I quickly course corrected and got back on the route that I need to take. And when I came over the hill and saw Barbara Lake here, I knew if I could find a good campsite that this looked like home. Also, when I came across Long Lake and met those group of hikers who had came this way, they had warned me that while I may be able to make it to Hay Pass during the daylight, it could be tough for me to have made it down to the lakes on the other side for camping before night fell. So I certainly didn't want to put myself in a position where I was descending an unfamiliar pass off trail in the dark. Here I am. It's been a great day today. Very adventurous hiking, obviously, with all the off trail. I enjoyed coming up through Europe Canyon. I enjoyed the crazy walk alongside Long Lake. Looking at the map, Long Lake is close to a mile long. It took me an hour and a half to traverse that 1 mile of terrain. That's how gnarly that area was. I've got a beautiful site here to settle in for the evening. I'm gonna get some dinner in me, and as long as nothing crazy happens, that'll be the end of day 3. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 4 of my backpacking trip in Wyoming's Wind River Range. I had a good relaxing night last night, much less lumpy than the night before. When I was poring over the maps yesterday evening, I made the decision to throw out the rest of my old route and just take things day by day for the rest of this trip. It wasn't really necessary. When I decided to cut off Hay Pass, I easily could have stuck to my original route, but I decided that I wanted to do something a little different, and strangely it felt quite freeing to make that decision. I say it's strange because I planned my original route as well, so I was already going where I wanted to go, but now I've thrown off the shackles of my old route and I'm going to take things day by day. And today I'm going to hike to Lake Peru. You may ask, why Lake Peru, Lane? Well, on my first day in, I passed a couple coming out, and it wasn't their first trip to the Winds. They were fairly familiar with the area. The lady said her favorite lake that they visited on this particular trip was Lake Peru. So I figure I'll go check it out. It looked to be about 9 miles away on the map, well within striking distance, and so Lake Peru is going to be my destination for today. I'm going to finish breakfast up, get camp packed, and then it'll be time to hit the trail again today. Bye-bye, Barber Lake. Appreciate the hospitality. It does appear to be a bit of a hazy day again today, but the haze burned off yesterday as the day progressed, so maybe that'll happen again. I'm going to hopefully connect with an unofficial trail here shortly that will take me through the North Fork Canyon for several miles, and then I'll be back on the official trail system. Round Top Mountain. Oh boy, am I glad to have this unofficial trail today. It may not look like much, but to me it signifies that I'm not going to have to do much boulder hopping. I'm not going to have to do scrambling. I can tune in, zone out, and enjoy the hike. One of the North Fork lakes of Boulder Creek. This is Lake Victor along the North Fork of Boulder Creek. I believe around here is where the official trail system is going to start back. I lost the unofficial trail a little while ago, but I'm not too terribly worried about it. I just rock hopped across the North Fork of Boulder Creek, and I'm now linking up with the official trail system, where I will remain for most of the rest of the day, starting out here on the Victor Lake Trail. I'm hopping on the Fremont Trail, which is also the Continental Divide Trail. I'll be there for the next couple miles. Out in the distance is the North Fork Lake. I'll be a little closer here soon. I've been back below the tree line for most of the day today. I had the opportunity to hike for a bit with a really cool fella named Breezy. He's on his attempt to complete the Triple Crown. He's doing the CDT this year. He's already completed the AT and the PCT. A nice fella. He's on his way to Mexico. Good luck, Breeze. And I also should have mentioned that I've broken off the official trail system and I'm now on an unofficial trail that should take me around the way to Lake Peru. This is Valley Lake, and the unofficial trail that I'm actually on is the start of the Europe Canyon Trail, which I was obviously on yesterday when I was going up through Europe Canyon for about a mile before I broke off and did Long Lake. I'm going to circle around Valley, and that should bring me pretty close to Lake Peru. I'm now on the east side of Valley Lake. I've split off from the trail that heads into Europe Canyon, and I'm following another unofficial trail That's looping me around to Lake Peru. Closing in on home for the night. Out in the distance to the south are the Pipestone Lakes. Here she is, my first sight of Lake Peru at the base of Medina Mountain. I'm gonna scout around the banks and see if I can find a sheltered site for the night. Home sweet home. This little alcove is going to require a bit of cleanup on the ground, but it's the best spot I've seen. I've come across 5 different fire rings out here, so fairly popular area to camp, I guess.
Stretching over 400,000 acres on the western side of the winds, the Bridger Wilderness hosts Wyoming's highest peak, 7 of the 10 largest glaciers in the lower 48, over 1,300 lakes, and more than 600 miles of trail. Let's take a look at the map for day 4. I started at my campsite on the southern edge of Boulder Lake, connected with the unofficial trail running through the North Fork Canyon, hopped on the Victor Lake Trail, came up to the CDT, and through this section is where I was hiking with Breezy, and then broke off the Fremont Trail CDT to the unofficial Europe Canyon Trail, broke off of that to come down towards Lake Peru, and then finally found a campsite on the bank of Lake Peru. Day 4 was about 8.5 miles. One thing that is pretty funny to me, I've walked almost 20 miles since then, but I'm only a few miles as the crow flies from my campsite on Halls Lake. Do you know what's better than 4 cheese pasta on a beautiful lake? 5 cheese pasta on a beautiful lake. Day 4 of my backpacking adventure in the Bridger-Teton National Forest has been another great day. I enjoyed hiking on trail today, a nice, easy, relaxing day for the most part. Got to see another handful of beautiful lakes, all surrounded by pretty mountains. And I also enjoyed getting to meet the soon-to-be Triple Crowner, Breezy, as he is working on the CDT. I do want to take a moment to opine about the differences between on-trail and off-trail backpacking. The physical differences are pretty obvious. It's much more difficult to hop across a boulder field than it is to stroll down single track. But the mental differences are maybe what I didn't anticipate coming into it, but have stood out even more strongly than the physical differences. And is mainly centered around the fact that off-trail, every footstep is a decision. I'm constantly thinking, do I need to go more north? Do I need to go more towards the east? There's a ridge coming up. Should I try to go over it? Should I go around it? There's a big patch of willows in front of me. Do I want to go to the left, to the right? What's the best path for me to take across this boulder field? Etc., etc. Every step off trail is a decision, and when I'm taking 30,000 plus steps a day, that's a lot of decisions to make that you're not making when you're on trail. You just get to kind of close your mind, follow the trail. The only time you really need to make a decision is when you're at an intersection. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I've enjoyed my time off trail. It's been fun, it's been adventurous. I've really felt like I was exploring and depending more on, you know, the skills that I have in terms of navigation. But it definitely has a high mental toll that I didn't anticipate coming into the portion of my trip that's been off trail. I've got dinner in me. I'm going to settle in for an evening here on the shores of beautiful Lake Peru, and hopefully the winds aren't too bad for me. As long as nothing crazy happens, that'll be the end of day 4. Good night. Good morning. Made it day 5, my backpacking trip in the winds. Had some weather roll through last night. There was a mild windstorm, and brought on the heels of it rain throughout the night. Hasn't been too terribly hard, but it is starting up again this morning. The weather today is going to determine how far I end up traveling, and my plan is to hike down to the Rough Lake Trail, and there are 4 lakes at various distances along that trail that I could end up stopping for. We'll see how things go. I'm going to get some breakfast in me, see how the rain shakes out, and then it'll be time to hit the trail. It is an intimidating, cold, windy, rainy morning today on Lake Peru. But I've got camp packed up. I'm ready to get hiking. I've got a little bit of off-trail work to tackle. Then I'll be back on the trail system for the rest of the day. The rain this morning has been frequent, but not too heavy. Hopefully it doesn't get any worse for me as the day progresses. Finished up my half-mile or so off-trail this morning, and now I'm back on the Fremont Trail, aka the CDT. This is a nose to the grindstone type day. Things could be a lot worse. The rain showers have been intermittent and light. The temperatures, although chilly when I'm stopped, are quite comfortable when I'm moving. And ultimately, I can't control the weather. All I can control is my attitude. It's my choice if I want to have a good attitude or a bad attitude. This is my second to last day in the winds. The second to last day of my 15 days in the Wyoming backcountry. And certainly one of the greatest adventures of my life to date. So I'm going to choose to have a good attitude. It's a beautiful day. Let's get it. This is interesting. There are pieces of broken bone right on the CDT. Looks like a pretty sizable bone as well. I wonder if something met its demise pretty close to this popular trail. Back like I forgot something, even though I didn't. North Fork Lake. Quite a different vibe than yesterday. Some ducks just took off across the water. Pretty forest through here along the Highline Trail. Making good progress today. The rain has continued to stay light when it does come down, which seems to be less often and less often as the day progresses, so that's certainly good news for me. A small unnamed pond. Still a dreary day, but the rain is holding off on me right now. Famous last words, right? Trail magic. Someone left some Cocoa Puffs for me here on the trail. No milk though. Edmund Lake. Spooky Ridge. Looking down on Coyote Lake from the Rough Lake Trail. Strangely, there doesn't appear to be a rough lake on this trail, so I hope it doesn't mean that it's a rough trail with lakes. Cross Lake. Looking down on Levitt Lake from the Rough Lake Trail. A couple miles in, and I wouldn't say the Rough Lake Trail is any rougher than the Highline Trail. Both of them have climbs and rocks and downfall. Above average roughness, but nothing crazy. No rain, hold off just for one more hour for me. Just one more hour for me, rain. The rain has subsided for the moment, but it could come back at any time.
This is a pleasant surprise. That is Boulder Lake, where I started my journey 5 days ago. I'll be back to her shores tomorrow, but I've got one more night out here. There she is, Blueberry Lake. Blueberry was my stretch goal on the day, the farthest of the 4 lakes along the Rough Lake Trail. And the rain is just starting again, so hopefully I can find a nice site around the bank pretty soon. Home sweet home. This is honestly just the first site that I came to. There may be something spectacular a little down the road, but this one's gonna do just fine for me. I'm about to get set up.
Finis Mitchell and his wife stocked lakes in the winds with over 2.5 million trout during the early 1900s. He also climbed all but 20 of the 300 peaks in the range, served Wyoming in the House of Representatives, and published a guidebook called Wind River Trails.
Let's take a look at the map for day 5. I started at my campsite on the shores of Lake Peru, did a short off-trail hike to connect with the Fremont Trail, CDT, and then followed that to the connection with the Victor Lake Trail, hopped on the Highline Trail, followed that for a good portion of the day to the Lake George Trail, and then the Rough Lake Trail, where I finished my day on the banks of Blueberry Lake. Day 5 was about 12.5 miles. Day 5, my backpacking adventure in the winds, has been another great day, although it did have its ups and downs throughout the way. This morning was a little bit of a downer. I hate packing up wet gear, and of course it had rained throughout the morning, so my tent was wet. But the day progressed pretty well after that. I've got a nice campsite on the edge of Blueberry Lake. I'm going to settle in and enjoy a relaxing evening, the penultimate day of my trip in the winds, and of my Greater Yellowstone adventure overall. As long as nothing crazy happens, that'll be the end of day 5. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 6 here in the winds, and the final day of my Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem adventure over the past 15 days in the backcountry. Blueberry's a little shy this morning. She's trying to hide behind the fog. We've been through about 16 hours of rain yesterday evening, last night, this morning. I took advantage of a lull to get packed up, and now I'm ready to finish off the last little bit of my trip here. It's not much more than a hop, skip, and a jump to the trailhead, and I'm ready to hit the trail. Thanks for the hospitality, Blueberry. A moody morning above Boulder Lake. This weather is a far cry from that which I started my trip in. Day one, it was mid to upper 80s, hot, sunny. Today it's about 30 plus degrees cooler, overcast, rainy. What a difference a day makes. What about all the effort a day takes? Yeah, buddy. Whoa! Thus ends my 6-day backpack in the winds and my 15 days total in the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem. I've talked about myself and my journey for the past 3 weeks. Now I'd like to take a moment to talk about you. I hope that this video or this series of videos provides inspiration to find your own adventure. You certainly don't need to go into the Wyoming backcountry for 15 days. I've been working up to this for years, if not most of my life. But adventure comes in all shapes and sizes. Stretch your boundaries, push yourself outside your comfort zone, set new limits, seek growth, attack challenges. Don't let the fear of failure stop you from trying. Live life, find your own adventure. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what a ship is built for. Until next time, thanks for tuning into Lane's World. Goodbye. Let's take a look at the map for day 6. Starting at my campsite on Blueberry Lake, I finished off the Rough Lake Trail, then the Burnt Connector, back to the Boulder Lake trailhead where I started my original journey. Day 6 was about 2 miles, for a trip total of approximately 55 miles.